For our program, CNN Business Traveller, we realized as we came to the end of 2012 that there had been this revolution, that the airline world had been turned upside down. Now, we've known for several years now that the three carriers, Emirates, Eithad and Qatar, were causing a new world order in aviation. But what we hadn't really seen until this year was the way in which they had upset all the existing relationships, the underlying airline relationships. So, for example, you have Emirates with its Qantas deal. You have Qatar joining Oneworld, and you have Eithad with its Air Berlin and Air France KLM arrangement. Put this all together, and what you have is SkyTeam, Oneworld and Star all on shaky ground because no one really knows how it's going to play out. And I think the important thing to note from my program here's point of view is these carriers, which have been so instrumental in changing aviation, are now about to make the next leap.
Looking, I guess, at aviation, definitely something that's been a cornerstone here in the region, but we're very much synonymous with the oil and gas sector here in the Middle East as well. Do you still see the Middle East as being all about oil and gas? I mean, we're certainly trying to diversify, but do you think that we've done that enough up until this point?
You cannot, Omar, ignore the fact that the backbone of the economy remains fossil fuels, oil and gas. Now, if you strip that out, you are left with industries that are growing, nascent, and in future years will become significant, but GDP related, they are dwarfed by the contribution. That's not the case here in Dubai, of course. That Dubai is very different from that respect. So it is banking, it's insurance, it's the port, it's exports, it's all the business of trade and industry in Dubai. But if you look at Abu Dhabi, you look at Qatar, and you look at the other countries of the region, you have to accept that oil and gas are still fundamental to these countries' future and their ability to diversify. I think one thing has changed, particularly here in the UAE, and it is this. Perhaps Abu Dhabi and Dubai no longer are determined to copy each other in their totality. Abu Dhabi will now go more for medical pharmaceuticals. It will go for a much more niche and specialized environment because, frankly, you ain't going to really be able to replicate the banking sector that you've got here in Dubai. It's got so many years ahead of it. This desire for diversification, for a post-fossil fuel economy, is very real, and it will take years to arrive. And I think that that's the important thing, not whether it's still the backbone of the economy, but the measures that are being taken to change that.
All right, well, it's definitely something that I think we're all going to be looking at in terms of how things develop. I guess looking at our region right now, looking at the Middle East, looking at, in fact, even at the entire MENA region, when it comes to the global economy, we hear a lot about slowdowns in China, the United States, and of course the ongoing Eurozone crisis. How do you view the Middle East's role, obviously, in the larger global economy and our role in that recovery?
It's crucial in many ways because as engines of growth and investment, these are absolutely important. And I think you've only got to look at how the sovereign wealth funds in Abu Dhabi and in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, how they have invested in other projects. It's easy to get a little bit frightened and it's xenophobic when you see Qatar this owns this and Abu Dhabi this owns that and things. But that is the change, and that is what you're talking about. Now, into this maelstrom of misery, you have the Eurozone. So they've agreed to buy bonds in certain situations, and they've agreed to bail out Greece for the third time eventually, and they've agreed to a banking union, but they've only put the blueprint, they haven't actually got the details. And everybody in Eurozone is saying, gosh, haven't we done a marvellous job? Let's have a round of applause and pass the champagne. I think it's way too early for that. They haven't yet put it to the test into fire and brimstone in these new measures. And that will come, I think, in 2013. Because we know the Eurozone is going to grow virtually in recession virtually next year, stagnant. Let's see if these new pieces of their firepower actually work.
Just touching quickly on the United States there, which you're referring to, of course. We've heard a lot about the ongoing fiscal cliff fiasco moving in, of course, 2013.
Yeah, the fiscal cliff.
Yeah, fiscal cliff, exactly. I'd love to hear if you think we're going to go off that cliff, if that's going to happen, if there is going to be some kind of positive development.
Do I believe, which is really your question, you're being polite, do I believe that they will avoid the worst measures of going over the cliff? Yes. Do I believe that they will put in place long-term structural deficit reduction? Far more skeptical about that, because the political environment, the political well in Washington is very poisoned at the moment.
Looking ahead to 2013, I'd love to hear, I guess, some of your thoughts on maybe some business trends that you feel maybe haven't been looked at as fully this year as they could have, that will sort of come to light more in 2013, things that your expectations, I guess, for the next year.
I think the biggest trend next year in 2013 is going to be just the very slow nature of growth. I think only now are ordinary, hard-working men and women realizing the depths and gravity of the crisis in 2008, 2009. People like myself have said this many times, but it was as if the patient had cancer, brain tumor, leukemia, and gangrene all at the same time. And as you treated one bit with spending, you've treated another bit with deficits. And as you yanked out wastefulness and corruption and added transparency, you created unemployment, or you had to. And these are the maladies of our economics at the moment. So I think what we'll be looking for is whether that process is continuing, where it's not going to be exciting. And maybe out in this part of the world where there's a lot more raw wealth and energy, literal and figuratively, to be spent. But for the rest of the developed world, particularly the Eurozone, the United States, Japan, even Australia, I would say, it's going to be a slow, sludge, trudge grind. And if that doesn't sound terribly appealing, it won't be. But at least we'll be growing, at least in most cases.